Ciao a tutti, Marcello here, welcome to a new video. Today I want to focus on the best isometric turn-based games of the last decade or so. We start our journey from 2014 up to the end of 2022. How many of these have you played? Let me know which ones are your favorites and share your gameplay stories below. Let's go! Wasteland 2 received incredible acclaim when it launched, and with good reason. Even now, almost a decade later, it's one of the most expensive CRPGs available with near unlimited freedom of choice and consequences for every decision. If you long for the days of old school Fallout or just want to play a top quality game, Wasteland 2 is a must-have. The digital deluxe edition even comes with a free copy of the classic Bard's Tale. It's rare that a game comes along that can define a genre, and even rarer that its sequel does it again. Divinity Original Sin is one of a few games to accomplish this feat. Both the original and the sequel stand out as the best of the best when it comes to isometric RPGs. Divinity Original Sin's Enhanced Edition includes split-screen multiplayer so you can quest with your friends. It's also the most complete version of the game with enough quests to challenge and surprise even the most dedicated gamer. Lords of Xulima packs over 100 hours of gameplay into an epic RPG tale. This indie title is a good choice for players who like a challenge, dropping them into a richly imagined world where survival is not guaranteed. Fans of classic RPGs will find lots to love in Lords of Xulima, which plays like a blend of Baldur's Gate and Dragon Quest. The deluxe edition includes the game's Talisman of God expansion, ensuring that you get the full experience. SHADOWRUN is one of the most iconic cyberpunk settings ever, blending classic fantasy tropes with neon-soaked corporated dystopia. All of the games in the SHADOWRUN trilogy are worth playing, but Hong Kong is arguably the best of the bunch. With a diverse team of runners, you'll make your mark on one of the sixth world's most intriguing but dangerous cities. SHADOWRUN Hong Kong can be bought as part of the trilogy package or on its own. Either way, be sure to get the extended edition, which includes an additional 6-hour campaign after the main story concludes. Another great choice for fans of classic Fallout, UnderRail lets players explore and hopefully survive in the subterranean world of the far future. With the surface of the Earth uninhabitable, civilization now exists in a series of tunnels, formerly metro stations. How you navigate the grim setting is up to you. Not only does UnderRail boasts a DLC pack called Expedition, but it's also part of a great Steam bundle for fans of isometric RPGs. The old school CRPG bundle offers several retro-style games for a respectable 15% off, including some other games on this list. If arcane fireballs and demons popping out of the ground at every turn isn't your kind of fantasy, try the Age of Decadence for a low magic alternative. This title offers all the freedom of the best fantasy CRPGs, but is more focused on intrigue and survival in its harsh setting. The devs come right out and say that the Age of Decadence is hard and that avoiding unwinnable fights is an important element of survival. If you're up to the challenge and want to see more of the setting, try the tactical spin-off Dungeon Rats. Originally a tabletop setting by veteran game designer Monte Cook, the far-future fantasy world of Numenera made its digital debut with Torment. The Kickstarter favorite evokes classic games like Baldur's Gate, all in a world of hyper-advanced but poorly understood technology. Numenera is a setting well worth exploring, and it's excellently brought to life in Torment. The game also has one of the most satisfying main character arcs around. With fresh takes on storytelling, setting and combat, Tides of Numenera is the full package. As we mentioned earlier, Divinity Original Sin 2 is the gold standard in CRPGs. With vast sweeping quest lines, gripping combat, and of course the ability to choose your own path through the story, this is one game that belongs in every RPG fan's library. Whether you play alone or in co-op, the choices you make affect the story from the moment you press New Game. Even your character's species and backstories will impact how heaven played out. This indie title blends classic isometric gameplay with a character creation system that calls back to tabletop RPGs. As one of the few survivors of a short but apocalyptic nuclear war, you'll explore what's left of the Soviet Union. The game's story involves unmasking a secret conspiracy in a destroyed world, but how you go about doing it is up to you. Atom RPG offers plenty of choices, so check it out and see what kind of survivor you'll be. If you like Divinity Original Sin but wish it had more pirates, then Deadfire is the game for you. This swashbuckling fantasy adventure has all the freedom and world building of a top-tier RPG in a high-adventure nautical setting. Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire has a stellar main campaign and plenty of DLC with new classes, quests and more. If you're dreaming of the tropics during the winter months, why not take your ship and crew on a quest to capture a rogue god? Kingmaker is one of the most beloved campaigns in the Pathfinder tabletop RPG, so it's natural that it would make the leap to a digital version. As an isometric CRPG, Pathfinder Kingmaker excels at preserving the original story, along with all the players' freedom and exciting quests players would expect. The great thing about picking up older games is that there's often lots of content available as extras, and Kingmaker is no exception. It's got several DLC packs and can be purchased alongside the other Pathfinder game, Wrath of the Righteous, to ensure that you have hundreds of hours of adventure ahead of you. Part of the joy of open-world RPGs is the freedom to do whatever you like. Queen's Wish adds a twist to this formula. As a young noble with all the resources of your vast empire at your disposal, every decision is yours to make. However, your mother the queen is always watching, and if she's dissatisfied with your actions, her reprisals will be swift. Whether you are a loyal servant of the Empire or an ambitious rebel, Queen's Wish gives players all the power and freedom they need. If you want more, there's a sequel available as well. Lots of isometric RPGs pride themselves on how open-ended their worlds and stories are. There are few, if any, games that offer quite as much of a free-form experience as Disco Elysium. This mystery story is brimming with the unexpected, its setting filled with opportunities for heroics and chaos in equal measure. Disco Elysium Final Cut is the game's definitive version, and it's been called the masterpiece several times over. It's certainly a must-play. This colorful tale is a great choice for fans of Final Fantasy Tactics, particularly the GBA incarnations. The ability to summon creatures into battle adds a little bit of Pokemon to the mix, changing up the tactical RPG formula for a fresh experience. Fae Tactics is a great game to try on its own, but it's also offered as part of several bundles. That's a fantastic way to ensure that you have got plenty of games for the foreseeable future. While it may not have the impact of its predecessor, Wasteland III is everything you could want in a series' next entry and more. With AAA graphics, tense combat and a wonderful depicted setting in the Rocky Mountains, this is easily one of the best CRPGs of 2022. There are already 2 DLC side stories available, the Battle of Steel Town and Cult of the Holy Detonation, and you can get both as part of the Wasteland 3 Season Pass. Among fans of isometric RPGs, Baldur's Gate needs no introduction. This Dungeons & Dragons adaptation, originally from BioWare, was many players' first experience with the genre. The announcement of Baldur's Gate 3 marked a triumphant return for the franchise. Even though it's still in early access, fans can play Baldur's Gate 3 right now and see the classic gameplay brought to the modern era. If you'd rather wait for the full release, why not load up the first 2 games for a new playthrough? The original Geneforge was something of a cult classic, but if this is the first time you've heard of it, you are in luck. Mutagen is a faithful remaster of the first game in the series, which puts players in the role of a shaper, a wizard who can create and modify life from nothing. Summoning and altering creatures, along with a bit of diplomacy here and there, is a core of the gameplay. You can even complete the game with a purely pacifist style. As you might expect, Colony Ship takes place entirely aboard a generation vessel meant to carry humans to Proxima Centauri over the course of centuries. Factions and societies have grown within the ship's enormous hull, creating a dark and dangerous far future world for players to explore. Colony ship is still in early access, and given its scale there should be plenty of look forward to as the development process continues. There's also a demo available if you want to try it, but wait for the full release. Solasta is one of the sleekest digital adaptations of the tabletop RPG experience available. Using the licensed rules from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, it faithfully recreates the feeling of dice rolling, miniature pushing adventure. Its new Dungeon Maker gives players more freedom to create their own campaigns than ever before. There are several full-length campaigns available as DLC. Whether you are playing alone or with friends, the adventure never stops. Wrath of the Righteous proves that Kingmaker wasn't just a one-time success. The second, and to date latest of all CAT's Pathfinder adaptations, Wrath pits players against demonic forces. With new classes and character options, it portends very good things for the future of the franchise. Wrath of the Righteous is still comparatively new, so there is still more content on the way. It offers 2 season passes, the second of which just released in October. No doubt, due to the influence of Fallout, the idea of a post-apocalyptic RPG often evokes a retro-futuristic 50s vibe. Encased takes a different tack with its generational nostalgia, instead taking place in an alternate 1970s. As an employee of a massive corporation, players explore the interior of a mysterious dome, uncovering its secrets. The base version of Encased includes all of the game's content, but there are DLC packs with new gear and character portraits. You can also get the game as part of Steam's narrative RPG bundle to discover more stories. Once you've discovered all the possibilities of the original Atom RPG, you'll find there's more to explore in the sequel, Trudograd. It directly follows the story of the original while preserving its free-form character creation and exploration of the Soviet ruins. Not only does Trudograd introduce more to the ongoing story of Atom RPG, but it's also been given a visual upgrade as well. This is one pair that's worth purchasing together. Here's a title that feels a bit meta. In a cyberpunk world, players take the role of a detective solving digital crimes inside vast MMO-style video games. It's a fun take on the cyberpunk trope of entering a digital world and gives the game freedom to add environments beyond rain-soaked streets and sinister corporate headquarters. Gamedec's bevy of awards should speak for themselves, both in terms of quality of the game's presentation and the breadth of the story. It's also available in the same bundle as Encased, which we mentioned early in this list. Mecha are an ideal vehicle for turn-based games, letting players mix methodically planning with dramatic explosions. Super Robot Wars 30 lets players pit some of the world's most iconic mecha anime franchises against one another in the ultimate crossover battle. Even if you're not an anime fan, Super Robot Wars gameplay is more than worth sticking around for. As you might expect from a Bandai Namco title, there's plenty of DLC to expand on the game as well. 2022 was a great year for turn-based games, kicking off with Expeditions Rome, where most CRPGs have a distinctly fantasy flavor. Expedition Rome is an historical game that sends players across the vast Roman Empire. As a Roman legatus, you lead campaigns in foreign lands, earn glory and perhaps seize power. Expeditions Rome is available as a bundle with the previous two Expeditions games, Conquistador and Viking. Play them yourself or get them as gifts from history's buff in your life. King Arthur Knight's Tale is what happens when a developer known for an excellent Warhammer 40k adaptation, Inquisitor Martyr, takes on the legend of the Knights of the Round Table. The knights, jaded and cynical after the death of King Arthur, must reunite to destroy the undead monster their liege has become. King Arthur Knight's Tale features tactical combat with a heavy focus on melee and armor, with plenty of magical surprises and renowned names from the legend. How will you rule Avalon? If you're in the mood for challenging XCOM style combat, Hard West 2 has it in spades and earths, diamonds and clubs. Blending Wild West tropes with occult lore, this game takes you across the frontier as a gun-slinging gambler and his posse, hoping to reclaim their soul. Hard West 2 rewards aggressive, bold action, but things can go wrong very quickly. The original is worth playing as well, but you don't need to have finished it to know what's going on in the sequel. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, Lost Eidolons is a great way to keep your tactical skills sharp while you wait for Engage to release next year. As a mercenary captain, you lead your band of misfits to glory in the midst of a medieval kingdom gripped by civil war. Lost Eidolons has some great visuals, blending realistic combat animations with epic spells and magical creatures. It's also verified on Steam Deck, so you can play it on the go. One of the 2022's biggest releases for tactical RPG fans, Triangle Strategy brought fans an original world from Square Enix with all the depth of the gameplay and story that you'd expect. The gameplay and themes will be immediately familiar to anyone who's played Final Fantasy Tactics, but there are some new twists, like party members voting on a course of action for each chapter, that make Triangle Strategy something new. The game also features the kind of top quality 2.5D graphics that Square Enix has been nailing in recent years. Speaking of Square Enix, let's not forget the return of Final Fantasy Tactics' spiritual sister Tactics Ogre. The two titles effectively defined the tactical RPG genre, but only one saw consistent releases afterward. That changed in 2022 with the announcement and release of Tactics Ogre Reborn. It's a remake of the original rather than a sequel, but for many gamers this is their first chance to play the classic. Given the positive reception it's received, maybe we can hope for more from the franchise in the future. This video ends here. Let me know what you think about these games in the comments below. Remember to hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel and also consider supporting me through all my pages. Wish you the best. Ciao!